Afternoon, everybody. Thanks for coming along. So I'm a managing director at an organisation called YSC. We're a global leadership consultancy. We help organisations around the world to ensure they've got the leaders that they need to make sure they're successful. So kind of some of the insights I'm going to be sharing with you today are things that we've learned from having worked with Tesco over the last 18 months, partly over the potential model, but also assessing some of your senior leaders and some of the things we found out. We did work actually with Tesco about kind of 9 years ago, and then we stopped working, and so we're really excited to start working with you again, because it's an organisation that I've always been very kind of passionate about. And as I was saying to Phil as I was coming up, it's wonderful to be here because it's my first time in this building, and it's a bit like Welwyn, it's a bit like Tesco overall, but it's also a bit like Silicon Valley. So there's this really nice kind of mix of the kind of Tesco identity here. So I'm really enjoying being here today. So thanks for coming. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk a little bit about the context for careers. I think that some of the presentations you've seen already today, for those of you who've been at them, will have been partly about that. So I'm not going to go into that in detail, but just a bit of a frame for kind of what's going on in the world. I'm going to get you to think about a sparkling moment, and kind of I'm going to get you to talk to each other in pairs or trios, and actually kind of share some thinking and reflection for yourselves. As part of your thinking about your career. So what I'd ask you is that when you do that, to treat everything the other person says as confidential. Is everyone comfortable with doing that? Okay, very good. Then we're going to have 5 questions. So the 5 questions that I think are really important to think about when you're thinking about your career. And then we'll end with 5 answers. Okay, does that make sense for everyone? Okay, am I at the right venue? I'm at the right event? You're not here to learn about GDPR compliance or anything like that? No, okay, that's good. That's lucky. Okay, so context for careers. Okay, what do we think are important? I mean, hopefully you're all very familiar with these, but just the pace of technological change. I mean, if I think about when I grew up, what a supermarket looked like, didn't have a club card, didn't have an online, didn't have unexpected items in bagging areas, so a completely different kind of retail experience. Amazon didn't exist. Drones dropping off shopping didn't exist. And so if we think about where retail is going to be in the future, it's hard to imagine that technology won't have a big part to play in shaping what that is like. And for those of you who are going to go on careers outside of Tesco, heaven forbid, what you'll find is whatever kind of industries you're in, the pace of change is absolutely massive, and the pace of disruption is absolutely massive wherever you go. Second bit is flat organisations. So the nature of organisations has changed quite a lot over the last 10, 15, 20 years. And we expect it to become flatter as they go forward. What we expect to see is less of that career ladder type of bit. Okay, less of I'll get my boss's job, then the job above that, then the job above that, then the job above that, and then finally I might become a junior manager. Okay, that kind of sense of kind of all these different layers. That's really kind of gone. And so one of the things to think about is, what does that mean for me? What does that mean for my career? What does that mean for the opportunities I need to develop for myself? Third one, the gig economy. So as organisational psychologists, we've talked for a long time about the boundaryless organisation. So the sense that actually who is in the organisation, who is not in the organisation is actually more fluid than it used to be. When you've got somebody who's, I don't know, working for you as a consultant, they almost become part of your organisation. Now with the gig economy, you have people who are kind of technically kind of maybe sometimes not employed by you, but actually you rely on them to be kind of representative of your brand, of your customer experience. And we expect to see that becoming more and more important as well. Sorry to add a kind of sober note to the proceeding, but we don't expect cost pressure to get any easier anytime soon. And obviously in retail, there's been all the kind of the impact of the big discounters coming in. We live in a world where investors want to have returns on their money, and one of the ways in which we do that is by being really tight on cost pressure. So we don't anticipate there being tons of cash going around, particularly potentially in a post-Brexit world, if that's not too controversial. And then the fifth one, diversity and inclusion. I think one of the things that we're seeing kind of across the organisations we work for is actually that society is no longer prepared to say that it's okay just to have white, middle-class, straight men at the top. Yeah? And so I think there's increasing pressure from society, from organisations, from governments, from regulators, from customers to say actually this needs to be more fair. So those would be the kind of the 5 big trends that I think are affecting careers going forward. Does that make sense to people? Any big surprises? Okay. Well, you don't have the microphone, so you might have big surprises, but I can just keep on going. Okay, so what I'd like to do now is I'd like to pair up with the person next to you. Okay. And I'd like you to have 5 minutes each way. So we're going to spend 10 minutes on this. And I'd like you to describe a sparkling moment at work in the last month. Okay? I'm not going to define sparkling moment for you. You can kind of figure out what that means. And if people are watching this later, I encourage you to go and find someone and have that conversation about a sparkling moment. And all I want you to do when you're in that listening mode bit is ask questions to understand in more detail what your partner did to make it a sparkling moment. Now, I'm aware that it looks like there are maybe a couple of threes here, maybe at the back, maybe here. So if you're in a three, you've got whatever that is, 3 minutes and 20 seconds. Brilliant maths. Each, but you've got 5 minutes each way for everyone else. And so your time starts now. Okay. So coming back into the room, everybody. How was that conversation for you all? Good, yeah. Good. Can we have the microphone? Who'd like to say what they found good about it? Someone who found it good.
I think just speaking to someone who's not related to my function as a starting point, and getting a different perspective in that way. It's good.
Fantastic. Anyone else want to share something that was good about that conversation? Fantastic. Yes, please.
So for me, when you said about finding a sparkling moment within the last month, you started talking about a sparkling moment. I thought, gosh, I'm looking back in my career. Yeah. And in the last month, given what we've all been through, I was like, gosh, I'm going to really struggle. Yeah. And then I thought of something quite small. Yeah. And it wasn't a massive sparkling moment, but it's kind of how it makes you feel. Yeah. So that was the difference for me. And as I was talking about that one, I then thought of something from yesterday.
Fantastic.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And actually, when things are really hard, we can often lose sight of those kind of sparkling moments, the things when we are at our best, when we do make a difference. And we can move on them really, really quickly without actually stopping to pause and get the energy that comes from them. So thanks both of you. Thanks all of you. Okay, so what I'd like to now is to, based on the listening and the questions and all that kind of stuff, I'd like you to spend a couple of moments writing down between 2 and 5 words to describe what the strengths are of your partner or your partners, the people you were talking to. Okay? So I'd like you to do that. And then when you're ready, I'd like to take it in turns to share those words. So I'll give you kind of, I don't know, about 5 minutes to do that. Okay, so coming back into the room, who'd like to share some reflections with Phil's magic microphone?
Hi, we were just reflecting that was so nice. Yeah. Just a really uplifting and just a really positive thing to do.
Yeah. It's amazing. It's how quick it is, but also how nice it makes you feel, doesn't it? Yeah. Okay, thank you for that. What other reflections would people have?
For us being in a 3, it was actually quite interesting because actually we'd often pick the same words for the same people, so we'd both put humble about Emily, and so it was actually quite interesting to see that we kind of got the same messages from the stories that we each told.
Fantastic, thank you. Anything else? Anyone want to share any other reflections on that exercise?
Just a small detail, but it's quite striking how just a 5-minute conversation can quickly bring up what the strengths of someone else is. Yeah. So it's how you very quickly grasp how clever or how strength that person is.
Yeah, all about asking the right questions and having conditions in which someone opens up to you in the right way. So just, Phil, don't go quite yet. Why do you think we started that exercise in a conversation about careers? What might this have? What might this have to do with today's conversation? What do people think?
Was it to demonstrate how easy it is to unearth people's strengths?
It's definitely part of that. Yeah, that's definitely part of it.
Okay.
Well, anyone else have any other thoughts? Yeah, go on.
The power of reflection.
Yes, the power of reflection, identifying strengths, but also for me, how important your strengths are for your career. Because actually, people tend to give you more responsibility based on the things you're good at, and you tend to want to stick at doing things that you enjoy doing. So one of the things that I always encourage people to do is actually start with the stuff that you're passionate about. Start with the stuff you're good at as the foundation of your career. And so we'll explain that a bit more as we go in today. Okay? So, 5 questions, and they flow on very nicely from that. Do I understand my strengths? Okay? Am I really clear about what I'm good at, what I'm better at than other people? Okay? Do I understand what drives me? Do I understand what excites me? Do I understand what actually makes me sparkle? I can see some people were sparkling just then. Am I really clear on what those things are? And then we start to think about, do I understand what the world needs? Because to have a career, it's got to be based on something that someone else is prepared to pay you for. Because I can be brilliant at, I don't know, fishing. I'm passionate about fishing. But actually, if nobody's going to pay me for those tiny little fish that I put out, that's probably not a career, that's a hobby. Yeah? So you've got to always be thoughtful about what the world needs, particularly in a world that's changing as quickly as it is. Fourth one, so I've been privileged enough to coach and to assess chief executives, kind of similar kind of level of people in organisations around the world. And one of the things that I notice for a lot of people who kind of get further in their career, they take responsibility for their own development. They don't say, I'm just going to wait for Tesco to give me an opportunity, for Tesco to send me on a course. They say, well, actually, I'm going to own this. I'm going to take responsibility for what I need to do. And then finally, am I looking after myself? Particularly during periods of stress and strain, if we don't look after ourselves, we're not going to kind of last the distance. There was a British politician, that was kind of a retired politician, that was recently asked what was the biggest determinant of success that he had identified in politics. Was it how kind of brilliant people were, how good they were at public speaking? And he said, no, the thing that determined the people that got to the top were the people that lasted the longest. Okay? So it's something to think about. How am I looking after myself? So those are the 5 questions, and then we'll spend the next half hour giving you an opportunity to reflect on those 5 before we wrap up at the end. Okay, does that make sense to people? Okay, so do I understand my strengths? 3 questions for you to reflect on. What are my strengths? Okay, what are those things that actually make me stand out from other people, that have enabled me to have my successes in my life and in my career? How can I get better at them? We often spend our time kind of, I would notice, people kind of beating themselves up for the things they're not good at. Yeah? You never get a job based on the things you're not good at. Yeah? If you're so bad at something, it can get in the way. So it's important to try and deal with that. But actually, you get jobs based on your strengths. So if you can actually take something you're good at and get 10% better at it, or 20%, or even twice as good at it again, then that's actually going to set you up for success in the future. And then the final thing is, whenever we have a strength, it can often cast a shadow. Okay? So if I'm very results focused, the shadow I may cast is that I may lose awareness of how I'm coming across to people when I'm getting things done. If I'm very creative, I may need to watch out for the fact that I confuse people with lots of crazy ideas and they don't know what's happening. Okay? So as you get clear on your strength, it's really important to be thoughtful about what are the things that are part of my strength that can actually get in the way. And so I'll give you a couple of minutes, about 3 minutes, just to reflect on this. And if you want to talk it with your pair or your trio, you can, but you don't have to. Just wanted to give you a chance just to pause and reflect and think about yourself today. Okay? And your time starts now. Okay. Lots of deep, reflective thinking going on. I love to see it. Okay. The next bit is, do I understand what drives me? And as psychologists, we broadly speak about 2 kinds of drive. We think about what are the things I want for myself. Okay, so that could be money, a job title, nice car, nice holiday. I'll stop getting distracted. And what do we want for other people? What's the difference we want to make in the world? What's the change we want to see? What's the legacy we want to leave? How do we want to make other people leave? Other people kind of feel when they've interacted with us. And what we find is actually, to progress in your career, it's really important to understand the second one. It's really important to understand what kind of makes you feel satisfied in terms of what you contribute to other people. One of the things that's quite interesting as well is that when we look at Tesco leaders, they tend to be clearer often on the first of those things and less clear on the second of those things. Okay? Clearer on the achievement they want to have, less clear sometimes about kind of the difference they want to make. And my experience of working with lots of senior leaders is it's always there, but sometimes it needs to be teased out of it. Sometimes you need to do a bit of that reflection time to actually get that to come to the surface. So 3 things to think about. What excites me about my work? Okay? What makes me feel kind of really kind of motivated to do it? What are those kind of moments that you were mentioning that actually when you look back you go, actually that was a really good moment? What's the difference that I want to make? Okay. Do I want to kind of have been in a job for a couple of years and to leave and it to be exactly the same as it was when I started, or do I want it to be a bit different? And what kind of difference is that? Do I want it to be being kind of more commercially successful? Do I want to be winning against the competition? Do I want the standards to be higher? Do I want the people to be happier? What is that difference that I want to make? And then kind of reflecting on those, what is my purpose beyond earning money? Now, earning money is really important because it enables us to provide for our families, to have a roof over our heads, to have lights, to have bread on the table. All these things are very, very important. But actually, there are different ways in which we can earn money. And so I'd like to think about what is that sense of why? What is that sense of motivation that's beyond just earning money? Okay, so again, I'll give you a chance to reflect on those questions. Once again, we'll have about 2 or 3 minutes. And if you want to, you can talk to your pair or your trio. But as with last time, you can just spend the time reflecting if that's helpful for you. Okay, and so coming back into the room. Okay, so you've got, and you can go away and you can do more work on this outside the room. I was speaking to actually the CEO of a tech company yesterday who I'm coaching, and he was kind of going through a period of kind of reflecting on where he was in his career. And I gave him this kind of model and the next bit about 3 months ago. And he rang me up and he was like, I've been thinking about this all the time. I've been reflecting on it and now I've decided what I want to do. So often these kind of, you're not going to crack everything today, but actually they're really useful questions to go away with and reflect on afterwards. The third part of it though is this one. Do I understand what the world needs? Because this is the difference between having a career and going fishing. Okay? Yeah? Well, I mean, some people, fishing is a career, but it obviously isn't for me. Okay? So do I understand what the world needs? And I guess the questions for me that feel really important is like, how is everyday life changing? What are those things that are happening at the moment in the world around us that probably indicate to us kind of how the world is going to change in the future? The big thing I think for us is automation, isn't it? So it's kind of jobs that only a human could do kind of 5 years ago now can be done by artificial intelligence or robotics, whatever else it might be. And if you want a career, top tip from me, you're not going to hear this for everyone else, is don't have a career in something that can be automated, yeah? Unless you're a robot. And then think about what are people still going to need in the future? Yeah? So these aren't an exhaustive set of questions like the other ones, but I just want you to have a bit of a think about what does the world need and how does that fit into what I'm good at and what I'm passionate about? Okay? So I'll give you another couple of minutes now to think about those questions. Okay. So now we're kind of more than halfway through the questions. I just want to give, Phil, if we can get you on your feet again. Anyone got any reflections they would like to share and kind of what's going on with them right now? Having thought about these 3 questions. Be careful of making eye contact, it's very dangerous.
This one actually made me worry that when I looked at my strength, I was like, robot probably could do all of those things.
I'm sure they couldn't.
Because kind of my strengths I put as kind of I'm quite logical,
yeah.
and I was like, actually that's completely what robots are. So kind of the softer skills are actually the things that probably are more valuable in a sense, because those are things like empathy and people skills actually can you teach an algorithm to have empathy possibly in the future?
But logic could be critical thinking, and that's something that robots are going to find really difficult, because they're going to be able to work with kind of heuristics, they're going to work with kind of patterns, but they may not be able to kind of dissect things in the way that we can.
Yeah.
So that might be an important thing as well.
Responsiveness as well as change and things like that.
Yeah. Who else wants to share a reflection on any of those first 3 questions, or maybe all of them together?
Mine was sort of similar to that, because what I deal in food safety risk, so logic and analysis of patterns and trends and things, on the one hand is automatable, but then you'll always have that the need for that human empathy and things in coming up with risk assessments and risk management options. So that's one of the things that's quite encouraging about that last slide for me. In terms of what will be automated, probably not that process. So that was quite positive.
So everyone's going to kind of rush into food safety now. And anything else? Anyone else want to share anything in terms of their reflections on those 3 sets of questions? Okay. So I'd encourage you to kind of think about those 3 things as kind of 3 bubbles, and you're looking for the intersection between the 3 of them. Okay. Think about your career, what you're great at, what you're passionate about, what the world needs, and that's likely to change over time as well. Okay. So then to get where you want to be, I would encourage you to take responsibility for your own development. Okay? And my 3 questions here are, am I maximising my opportunities? So one of the things that I've heard from leaders in Tesco's in the past is that it was all about getting a bigger job, moving vertically up the organisation, rather than necessarily moving sideways. And in an organisation, in a world where organisations are getting flatter, I would encourage all of you to be more open to what we would call in the trade as lateral opportunities. More open to actually moving across a department, potentially even across a function, potentially even across a country, because of the learning you get from doing something in a different way somewhere else. Because then what that does is it gives you greater flexibility. Am I working on my curiosity and flexibility? Then flows from that. Do I always kind of get my news from the same place? Do I always go and have lunch at the same place? Do I always talk to the same people? Okay? The smaller your network of contact with the outside world is, the smaller are going to be your perspectives and your options and your ideas. So one of the great things about diversity is that it exposes us to perspectives, points of views, identities and experiences that are different from our own. Okay? And if we stay in a bubble of people like us, we're not going to maximise your curiosity and flexibility. And one of the things that we know about the world is it's changing and it's likely to change. And so it's a bit like the origin of the species. The adaptability is what's going to enable you to survive. And you can increase your own adaptability by focusing on it every day. And then the final one is, am I clear on my development priorities? So it's what I like to say to people. If you're trying to kind of, I don't know, give up smoking, stop eating cake, take exercise, kind of lots and lots of different things all at the same time, and you're not prioritising them, chances are nothing is going to get done. So what I'd always say to people, if you want to get better at things, focus on 1 or 2 things at a time. Get really clear about kind of where you want to be in 3 months' time in that area, be really clear on your prioritisation, and then do it just as you would any other task at work, kind of put a plan in place to get it done. But if you're not clear on what that is, development isn't going to happen by accident. So again, I'll just give you a couple of minutes just to reflect on those questions and really kind of hold the mirror up to yourself about your own development. You clearly care about your development. You're here today, otherwise you wouldn't be here. But my challenge to you all would be, I bet you could own this a bit more. I bet you could be more clear on your priorities. I bet you could be more clear on how you make yourself more flexible. Okay? Maybe not after the end of this session, but hopefully very soon, after spending some time thinking about it, talking with friends, maybe talking with family. You're going to be clear on your strengths. You're going to be clear about what really excites you. You're going to be clear about what the world needs and how those 3 things fit together. You're going to be owning your development to become that kind of person that's going to be successful in those environments, and you're really clear about what you're going to do. So the final bit is then, am I looking after myself? So it's that thing about the people who get to the top are often the people who kind of last the longest. It's the kind of, the old cliche is it's a marathon, not a sprint. So how are you looking after yourself, and how are you taking responsibility for that? And so I grew up, as you can tell from my accent, in England. And I was always kind of told at school and everything that kind of you shut up, you stop whinging, you get on with things. And that's what resilience is. But actually, when you look at the psychological research about resilience, it tells us something slightly different. So we've got this model of resilience that we've come up with at YSC based on all the academic research, and there are 5 key elements to it to develop your resilience. And as I go through them, I'd like to think about which are the ones I'm really good at that I can do more of, and which are the ones that potentially trip me up a bit that I might need to kind of watch out for. Okay, so the first one is support. I was reading something the other day which said the biggest predictor for recovery from serious trauma or serious illness is the quality of the relationships that you have. It's also the biggest predictor for longevity of humans. Okay, the quality of the relationships you have. Do you have the kind of people you can go to like emotionally vent when you're upset about something, when you're frustrated about something? Do you have the kind of people you can go to and get practical support? I'm really struggling with this thing at work. I can't quite kind of figure out how to do whatever it is that kind of food safety people do. And actually it's the relationships that you have, that you form during the unstressful times, that you can then draw on in the stressful times. And as psychologists, we found out that there's something called the law of reciprocity, which is when you help other people, they're more likely to help you. So not using relationships in a selfish way, just kind of pulling stuff to you, but also who are the people I want to go back to, where it's going to be a really mutually beneficial relationship of support. That's the first one. The second one is about confidence. Confidence is that really difficult to describe thing, isn't it? That kind of when we have it, everything feels easier. When we don't have it, we second guess ourselves, we worry, and everything feels harder. What we find about confidence is that it's mutually reinforcing, whether positively or negatively. And the way to make it mutually reinforcing positively is to do little things that you haven't done before and do them successfully. Okay? That then gives you a bit more confidence to do something else new, and that then reinforces it. Okay? So one of the dangers you can have is you try and do something that's so far outside your comfort zone that actually you can't do it at all, and then that knocks your confidence. So as psychologists, we talk about the kind of comfort zone, which is where you're not growing, then the kind of the growth or the stretch zone, which is just outside of it, things that don't feel that comfortable, but actually they actually help to build your confidence, and the panic zone, which is when you've gone too far. So one of the ways to build your resilience is to be really keyed in to how you're building and developing your confidence. Also think about who are the people that give you confidence, who are the people that take that confidence away from you, who are those kind of energy killers, yeah? Because actually they're not good people to hang out with if you want to increase your resilience. Third bit is about striving. Now striving for us consists of two things. One is what's called in the psychological literature kind of resilience or grit. Okay? It's that determination. The problem with that on its own is that you can be resilient and gritty and determined in completely the wrong direction. Okay? And we can probably all think of times in our lives, I know I can, when I stuck at something because I wanted to see it through and get to the end, when I actually probably should have given up halfway through and actually gone and had a conversation with someone or gone and done something differently. The other part of it is actually coming up with alternative routes to achieve something. So it's like, I've got my purpose, I know why I'm here, and actually, instead of going going over there, I can actually go over there. Now, if you have that multiple possibilities without the determination, you won't get anywhere. But if you have the determination without the multiple possibilities, chances are you'll kind of drive into a brick wall. Okay? So part of resilience is that combination of the two, what we call striving. The fourth one is the more traditional part of resilience, which is basically how well are you looking after yourself. Okay? It's all the stuff that we know that we're all rubbish at. So it's all the, do I get a good night's sleep? Yeah? Do I eat 3 proper meals a day, or am I snacking on chocolate bars and biscuits and all the other delicious things that you can get in Tesco? And kind of, am I drinking too much? Am I staying out too late? All of those, am I taking enough exercise? All those kind of things that we know are important. Because what they enable us to do is that when we're stressed, they enable us to recover. They enable us to actually create the space for ourselves to re-energize. Okay? And then the fifth one is, do I actually make the time to stop and reflect? So one of the things I've been trying to get you all to do today is, in your busy lives under pressure, just to create a little bit of space. Because actually when we create that space, we can adapt, we can learn, and we can change. So I'm coming to the end of my hour, and I can see somebody outside who I think wants to come in. This might be your next speaker. So just before I do, just kind of recap your 5 answers that I'd like you to leave with. Even if you're not quite sure exactly what they are, then you've got the starting point for them. Is I really understand my strengths. I understand what I'm good at. I understand what I'm better at than other people. I understand what makes me distinctive. Okay? I understand what drives me. I understand my passion, my purpose. I understand the thing that's really going to get me out of bed in the morning and enable me to sustain my way through my career. I understand what the world needs. I've got a clear-sighted view that means I'm not going to have a career as a very poor fisherman. Okay? The fourth one, that I'm actually taking ownership. I'm not waiting for someone else to do this for me. I'm not thinking, well, it's Tesco's job to tell me what I'm going to do next and give me a lovely career here. I'm taking responsibility for it. And then finally, I'm going to look after myself. Because actually, to achieve what I want to achieve, I'm going to need to recognise it's a marathon, not a sprint, and I'm going to need to train accordingly. So thanks very much for listening to me, listening to my strange questions. It's been a real pleasure to interact with you. Thanks very much for having me here. Cool. Thank you.